Hi everyone. Today my group and I will be presenting on chapter 6, which is the Edo period. My name is Julie and I'll be presenting on Nichiren. He was a fisherman's son who lived from 1222 to 1282 and became an intense Buddhist monk during the Kamakura period. He didn't agree with Pure Land Buddhism, which was really popular at that time, and instead he believed that the Lotus Sutra was the most important teaching of the Buddha. He encouraged people to chant, "I take refuge in the supreme law of the lotus." He openly criticized others and called them false, which made him a lot of enemies. Many of his early followers were samurai, most likely because of his strong personality and his direct style of teaching. He saw himself as a warrior monk, and he warned that Japan would suffer disasters like civil wars if the government didn't adopt his teachings. Over the years, he was arrested, exiled, and even nearly executed. And according to legend, a meteor appeared in the sky right after he prayed, and it scared off the executioners. He didn't end up dying at that time. It was also said that Nietzsche then predicted the Mongol invasions, which made his reputation grow even stronger. His teachings became more popular, especially the belief that Japan had been protected by a divine wind, also known as kamikaze. Today, his legacy lives on in Nichiren Buddhism, which still centers on chanting the Lotus Sutra as a path to enlightenment.
Hi, my name is Lola Moreno, and I will be talking about Tokugawa Ieyasu, born in 1543 and passed in 1616. He was the shogun of Japan between 1603 and 1605, and then gave the title of shogun to a family member, and he was just kind of pulling the militia behind the strings for a very long time. He was the first um, member of the Tokugawa shogunate. So until basically 1616, all shoguns were either his sons or relatives. Very powerful shogunate in the Edo period, kind of ushered in the Edo period. Tokugawa Ieyasu as a person was very strategic, and he promoted the practice of the board game Go. It's like checkers, but um, a lot more there's a lot more steps to it. So he actually would hold Japanese championships for the game Go, and he also promoted all samurai to learn the game because it was just really good in teaching military strategy. He was known as the Great Barbarian Suppressing Supreme General because he was very strict on outlaws and like people who tried to act out of the law. He was a very strict shogun, and he was known to show no mercy against like uprisings. He begun the Sakoku period of Japan. So this is the beginning of Japan's 200 years of isolation, 2 centuries. He first began to limit foreign powers to certain areas. So he only had England coming out in and out of one single bay, and then eventually he just shut like China, England, Japan, Portugal, all out of Japan. And he also ruled that anyone who was half Japanese or less was had to have leave. So anyone who was not full Japanese had to leave the country or they would be killed. So he really was for a mono-ethnic state. Yeah, he also very much did not like Christianity. He believed in just keeping Japan as it was, like Buddhist, Confucianism, Shinto religion, Shinto belief. And then he also, again, he implemented strict national and foreign policies. Nationally, he just was very strict on borders of districts. He didn't want any people crossing over unless to his approval. And he also did not like daimyo, so rulers of those districts, of those areas, to marry off their sons and daughters unless approved by him because he wanted full control. He had full control of the state. He was a very powerful and strategic leader that really defines the beginning of the Edo period.
My name is Victoria, and I will be presenting on Matsuo Basho. He was considered the supreme Japanese haiku poet. Haiku, a form of poetry that captures a fleeting moment in just 17 syllables. Although he was born into a low-ranking samurai family, Basho turned away from that path and followed the way of literary and spiritual expression. Introduced to poetry by Todoyoshi Tada, with whom he worked and shared a mutual love of Ranga. a genre of Japanese linked verse poetry in which two or more poets supplied alternating sections to a poem. He found inspiration in Zen Buddhism, nature, and travel, combining these into his poetic philosophy. Basho elevated haiku from a playful social game into a serious literary art that reflected Zen simplicity and emotional depth. His most famous travel diary, Oku no Hosomichi, The Narrow Road to the Deep North, documents a months-long travel through Japan's rural landscape, filled with reflection, haiku, and spiritual insights. He believed in the beauty of imperfection, impertinence, often writing about falling leaves, frogs leaping into water, or the silence of a remote temple.
Hello, I'm going to be talking about Katsushika Hokusai, who is actually a super famous figure from chapter 6, and he was born in 1760 and then died in 1849, so was pretty old. He is an artist, and he was interested from art at a young age. He began painting at the age of 5. And what he's most known for is this style of woodblock prints. Um, I'm sure you can already see the notable images on the slide, and that type of art style is called ukiyo-e, which means pictures of the floating world. And so he studied at an ukiyo-e school from his master Katsukawa Shunsho, and he started with kabuki paintings, which I'm sure like you might have seen too, are kind of similar in this woodblock style where they have sharper outlines and color contrast. And so that's what he started doing. But because he was actually pretty obsessed with Mount Fuji, his most famous works were landscapes. And he had this also kind of obsession with immortality, as he believed that Mount Fuji kind of represented that because it's been around for a long time, obviously still around today, and it's an iconic figure in Japan. And during this time in the Edo period, he didn't leave Japan at all. So this was the symbol of Japan, and he associated it with immortality, and he wanted to live forever. So his most famous work of art is the compilation of the 36 views of Mount Fuji, and that was created in 1831. So towards the end of his life, where his most famous works of art were when he was a little more mature as an artist. And so that's where the pictures like the Great Wave of Kanagawa and the Fuji on a Clear Sky, which is the bottom left, and you might have seen that as well. I actually have some stickers of those works of art. And he is a little mysterious. He lived in 93 different homes throughout his life and also changed names. So he had like about a dozen different nicknames. But Hokusai was what he was most known for. But he would sign some works of art with different names. So it kind of shows his personality as an artist, a little chaotic in some ways. And the bottom right is a picture of, it's his self-portrait, and that's him painted as a fisherman and kind of looks, lonely in the distance. And his last words, which I thought was interesting and kind of encapsulated him as a person, were, "If I could only live 5 more years, then I would become a real painter." And so that also kind of shows his view of immortality, that he just wanted to keep living, even though he was about, I believe, 89 at the time. Most people might be on their way out, and he still wanted to continue to create. And so, yeah, I'm sure you have seen Katsushika Hokusai, definitely, but I hope you learned a little bit more about him, and hopefully that'll emphasize your understanding of the reading better. Thank you.